Content warning. Episodes of Gray Matter may contain themes and depictions of extreme mental illness, traumatic bodily harm, and death. If you aren't in the right headspace to engage with those depictions right now, maybe this episode should wait for another time. Otherwise, proceed with caution.
Oh, hey, welcome back to Gray Matter Video. Sorry about the buckets everywhere. The roof of the building is leaking and we can't figure out why. Actually, that reminds me of a tape. Oh, here it is. A Leak in the Basement. It's a fun little metaphor-driven romp about an unconventional act of animal husbandry. Oh, come on. Have I ever led you wrong before? Of course not. Now, go watch it before you get dripped on or before the tapes get wet and start to expand out of tape space and into our corporeal layer. It's a whole thing. Just go. And, don't step on that wet spot by the door. I'm letting some water pool there so I can slip on it and sue the shit out of this place. You can call it insurance fraud if you like, but I call it my only chance at retirement.
A Leak in the Basement. Written and directed by Jonathan Inbody and adapted from his short story of the same name.
I woke up one morning to find an inch of water in the basement where I did my drinking. I had fallen asleep on the couch the night before, and when I swung my legs down to the ground, my feet came to rest on the carpet with a dull squelch. I winced and pulled my feet back up, then looked from my soaked socks down to the layer of still water covering the floor. It was murky black, with bits of dirt and grass floating around aimlessly inside. But where had it come from? I put my wet feet back down into the water and got up off the couch, tossing aside an empty bottle as I scanned the room for a burst pipe. I walked over and unplugged the mini-fridge, ripples gently extending from each half-submerged step, then moved to the TV and disconnected it. The couch was probably ruined, and no matter what else, the carpet would have to be torn up and replaced. I could save the television and the fridge, probably, provided I got them out of there as soon as I switched off the basement breaker. I took sloshing steps over the wooden staircase at the far end of the room and started up it, listening to the water drip out of my soggy pant legs as I climbed the stairs. Behind me, the basement was almost eerily quiet. I switched the breaker off upstairs, then took off my wet socks and put on my rain boots. At least it was only an inch. I trudged back downstairs and took a few trips back up with whatever hadn't already been ruined. The dartboard could keep hanging on the wall, and the couch could stay where it was, but it was probably a lost cause. I sent a text to my daughter to see if she was free to help me, then headed back down to find the source of the leak. I scoured the walls and crisscrossing pipes for the next half hour, but in the end I came up empty-handed. Where was it coming from? Water doesn't just happen, it has to be let in somewhere. I'd need to borrow a shop vac and a dehumidifier, or rent them, and calling a plumber couldn't hurt. What a shit way to start the day. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair, then checked my phone to see if my daughter had responded. What was that? I looked over just as a small ripple spread through the black water on the other side of the room. A long, thin shape rose to the surface and lazily drifted towards me. It swam in a quick circle around my legs, then stopped just in front of my feet. The thing was close enough now that I could see it, but what I saw didn't make any sense. Floating in the water at my feet was a small crocodile, no more than 4 inches long and covered in shiny black scales. Its purple eyes stared expectantly up at me, and as it breathed, its scales shifted color between black and a dullish indigo. The little creature opened its mouth to reveal a few rows of jagged white teeth, then turned its head to face mine and paddled its tiny limbs in place. I stared down at it in blank confusion. There weren't any crocodiles around here, and even if there were, they didn't look like this. The thing stared back at me with vacant eyes, then clacked its jaws and opened its mouth wide. I stepped backwards and up onto the bottom stair, then looked down to see that there was something in its mouth. The little crocodile swam up to the stair, then dropped half of a dead mouse between my feet. What are you? Somebody's pet? A crocodile that thinks he's a cat? Is that... What the hell?
Hey, Dad.
Hey, Jess, come here quick. There's a thing down here that I turned to look at the crocodile thing just as it dipped back down into the water. I heard a soft whish as it darted away from the bottom step. Then I turned back towards the open door at the top of the stairs. Never mind, I'll be up in a minute. You can hide wherever you like, little guy. You won't be here long. You got here quick.
What?
Well, you saw my text, right?
What? No, I'm just here to do laundry.
Did you bring galoshes? A few hours later, my daughter and I sat on the basement stairs with a rented dehumidifier as a plumber in rubber boots walked around knocking on the walls to find broken pipes. I finished a beer and put the bottle down into the garbage bag my daughter and I had filled with the others we'd collected from around the basement. Maybe the $3 she'd make at the 5-cent bottle return would make up for her dirty clothes. The plumber ran his gloved hand down a long pipe, then turned back towards us and shrugged.
Well, I don't see anything obvious, Mr. Clark. Maybe it's coming through the floor or a crack in the wall or something.
Yeah, maybe.
That's a lot of water to show up overnight, right?
Yeah, there's gotta be a burst pipe somewhere. Hell, if I know where.
Could it have come from outside?
Maybe. Do you have any water sources around? Rivers, creeks?
Not that I know of.
Huh.
Wherever the hole is, it's big enough for an animal to get through. There's some kind of lizard or something down here. I saw it this morning.
It was probably already down here. It started moving around because of the water.
I haven't seen it anywhere, if that makes you feel better.
Yeah, it's probably already gone. Critters like that really don't stick around when it's wet.
By the end of the day, the water had risen another inch. The plumber had promised he'd be back the next morning with a water pump, but his advice for the night was just to avoid going downstairs. Jess and I had managed to get the couch up the stairs, and we set it outside on the porch to dry in the summer heat. The boxes of old comic books and tax information were ruined, of course, but I hadn't touched any of the things I was storing down there for years anyway. I'd left the dartboard hanging. If the water reached a spot that high on the wall, we'd have bigger problems than replacing it. As day faded into night, I sat at the bottom of the basement stairs with my head in my hands. What an awful goddamn day. I stared down into the black water. There were small purple lilies floating on its surface now. It would only be a matter of time before the local mosquitoes noticed and settled in. Maybe the sump pump was leaking in from the yard, or maybe there was an underground reservoir that the surveyors had missed when the house was built. But what did it matter? 3 small shapes rose to the top of the water in front of me. I squinted and leaned down, trying to make out what they were, then shivered. Mice. They were dead, bobbing limply atop the water like driftwood after a hurricane, each one torn apart in a different way. A familiar shape rose to the black water's surface. A small crocodile chirped happily and swam around the stairs, its shiny scales rippling between black and purple, then looked up at me with expectant eyes and waited. You found more, huh? Good for you. Creepy little bastard. By the time I woke up the next morning, the water had risen another inch. It had taken the bottom stair now and was getting close to submerging the second. I could hear the little crocodile splashing around happily downstairs while I nursed my hangover. At least someone was having fun. The plumber returned just before noon with the pump he had promised to bring, and while he set it up, I snaked the hose from the basement up through the house and out the door to the yard. I asked him again if he saw anything down there, and he still had no idea what I meant. It must have scurried off again as soon as he had arrived, just like when Jess had showed up yesterday. Why didn't it hide from me? And why not leave them dead mice? Later that night, while I sat watching TV in the living room, I heard quiet whining from behind the basement door. I sighed and got up off the couch, then walked over to the door and opened it. Swimming in place at the bottom of the stairs was the little crocodile, opening and closing its toothy mouth as it whimpered loudly. What's your problem? No more mice? Well, what do you want me to do about it? Fine. I rolled my eyes, then turned and walked into the kitchen. I took a package of raw bacon from the fridge and tore off a small strip, and walked back over to the open basement door and tossed it down the stairs into the water. The little creature circled the bacon, then swam underneath it and nipped at it with its front teeth. It slurped up the strip of meat, then chewed once or twice and spat it out onto what was now the bottom stair. Come on! What do you want from me?
Mice.
What did you just talk?
Mice.
Are you like a parrot or something? You repeat things people say to you?
Mice.
Okay. I'll get you mice. But not until tomorrow, and only if you stop doing that. Right now. The little crocodile slowly sank beneath the black water's surface, holding eye contact with me until it was fully submerged. I heard it swim off underwater to hide in whatever dark nook or cranny in the flooded basement that it was now calling home. I shivered as I closed the basement door, and I wasn't exactly sure why. Once I was sober the next morning, I drove out to the nearest pet store and picked up some food for the weird little thing. Feeder mice, that's what the cashier called them. Poor things never even had a chance.
Okay, was there anything else you needed today?
No, just these. These are what snakes eat, right? And lizards?
Depends on the kind. What sort of pet do you have?
Well, it's not really a pet. My basement flooded and it just kind of showed up.
Why don't you just get rid of it then?
I don't know. I guess I just feel bad for the little guy. He ate all the mice downstairs, so I feel like I ought to give him something. As a reward or whatever.
Well, if you feed it, it'll stick around.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
You could catch and release it somewhere, or get animal control to do it.
Okay, thanks. Hey, this might be a weird question, but do you know of any lizards that kind of glow? Or talk? Not like talk, but imitate people?
No. Why?
Just curious. Back at home, I took a few of the feeder mice out of the bag and dropped them into the water, then waited for my little buddy to come up to the surface. After a few seconds, I heard him swimming out from behind the stairs and watched as he slowly circled the floating mice before hopping up onto the second stair from the bottom. He looked up at me with his empty purple eyes and opened his mouth. What, now you're too good for mice?
Mice.
Is it because they're frozen? Do you need them fresh? I don't know if the pet store has live ones. The little crocodile clacked its jaws again and slid down off the stair and slinked into the water. This thing was picky. The cashier was right. I should have gotten rid of it. But then I had already spent the money on the mice, and I didn't think that was the sort of thing someone could return. I left them floating in the water and headed back upstairs. If that thing got hungry enough, it would eat them. Besides, it's not like it was starving. From what I could tell, the thing was getting bigger. Over the next 2 days, the water rose high enough to cover the third stair from the bottom, then the fourth. In the same time, the little thing had grown from 4 inches long to 8. It had eaten the frozen mice and was halfway through the other bag I'd bought to feed it the next day. I thought about calling animal control, but it seemed like every time I even considered it, the creature would disappear into the depths of the black water. If this thing didn't want to leave, I wasn't sure I could force it to. My daughter brought lunch from my favorite sub shop to cheer me up, and we sat at the kitchen table in relative silence as I tried to unwind. Do you want a beer? I'm having one.
No, I'm okay. You're doing that a lot lately.
So?
You've just got to be careful is all. Wasn't Grandpa an alcoholic?
Grandpa had a lot of problems.
Yeah, drinking all day was one of them.
Is that why you came over?
No, I just wanted to see how you were doing.
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm thinking of letting the neighborhood kids use my basement as a swimming pool.
I'm serious.
So am I. There's enough water now.
You still don't know where it's coming from?
Nope. We've had that pump going for days. Doesn't even slow it down.
Well, it's got to be coming from somewhere.
Apparently not.
What was that?
Oh, that's the lizard thing. It's hungry again. Come here a second. I'll throw him a couple of mice and I'll show you.
Jesus, the water's high.
Yep. Mice, come get 'em. Mice, now. Aren't you hungry?
Dad, are you feeling all right?
Just... Apparently he's shy. I'm just gonna dump him out of the bag. I'll take a picture the next time I see him. You'd better eat those. They're all you're getting.
I've got to go. I'll see you soon, okay?
Yeah, I'll see you later. You couldn't have just shown up. One time I want you to. The black crocodile rose slowly to the dark water's surface. Its eyes were different now, almost thinner, with hints of sly contempt around the edges. Its scales pulsed slowly. As it glowed, soft purple light reflected in the water around it, bouncing off the strange lily pads and bits of pond scum resting on its surface.
More mice.
You already have mice.
Bigger mice.
That's as big as they get, you little creep. A low growl rose from deep inside the creature's throat. Its bright eyes flashed with sudden anger, and it climbed onto the lowest stair above the rising waterline, then fanned out the long claws on its four-toed feet and slowly scratched at the wood. It looked so much bigger now, almost the size of a squirrel or fox, and its spiked tail swung back and forth behind it with an ominous rhythm.
Mice. More mice. Bigger mice. Get.
I stared down at it, and it stared back up at me. It wasn't asking anymore, it was ordering. I walked back up the stairs and closed the door, leaving it in the dark as I thought about what I should do. It was time to call animal control. Even if it hid from them like it hid from the plumber, this was their job. They'd find it, or trap it, or if necessary, put it down. It didn't matter if this thing could imitate voices, or change colors, or vanish like a goddamn ghost. It was an animal, and they could catch it. Was it imitating my voice, though? Had I said more or bigger in its presence? Or was it learning? It was putting thoughts together now, or at least it seemed to be. Where the hell had this thing come from? After leaving a message with animal control, I watched shitty game shows until about 2 a.m., then fell asleep in the living room easy chair with a bottle in my hand. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking briefly at each creak of the old house or howl of the wind outside, before finally getting up to walk to the bedroom as the first streaks of sunlight filtered in through the windows. I walked through the kitchen and looked over at the front door. It was hanging slightly open. I closed and locked it, then looked around my house to see if anything else was out of place. Hadn't I locked the door before I settled down into the easy chair? Maybe not. My sock came to rest in something wet on the kitchen floor, and I froze. It was a puddle of blood, starting near the front door and streaking off into the hallway. Down the hall, 2 more misshapen puddles sat in front of the open basement door. I took a carving knife out of my silverware drawer and walked slowly down the hall to the basement, taking care to avoid stepping on any of the spots that creaked. I put my free hand out and rested it on the doorknob, then tried to get up the courage to open the door the rest of the way. My blood ran cold. That thing had gotten out somehow, killed something and dragged it back here. I looked down the basement stairs into the darkness, then turned and switched on the hallway light. The black water had risen again. It was almost halfway up to the door now. The surface was eerily still, except for a small shape bobbing in the water on one side of the staircase. It wasn't moving. Maybe the creature hadn't gotten something. Maybe it had tried and something had gotten it instead. Maybe it only came back here to die, like an old dog under a rotted porch. I stepped down onto the first stair, waiting for a response as it creaked underneath me. When none came, I took the next step down, and the next, tightening my grip on the carving knife as I descended. I was so afraid of this thing, and I didn't even understand why. It was just an animal. What's the worst it could do? I stepped down onto the last stair above the waterline and stopped. The small shape bobbed limply on the water's surface next to my foot, still unmoving, as I crouched down and put a hand out to touch it. It felt like wet hair. The shape rolled over and I screamed. Floating in the water was the half-eaten head of a cat. I pulled my hand away and sprang backwards. My foot slipped on the wet stair underneath me and I fell, sliding down into the dark water as I reached out frantically for something to grab onto. The carving knife dropped out of my hand and bounced off the stair, then plopped into the black water and started to sink. I came to rest in water up to my waist, with one outstretched hand clutching a stair above me as the only thing keeping me from slipping in further. A shiver ran down my spine. My feet weren't even touching the floor. How deep had the water gotten? The black crocodile rose to the water's surface beside me. It opened its mouth to reveal torn strips of bloody flesh stuck in between its jagged teeth, then closed it again and stared. It was even bigger now. I slipped. Didn't mean to, spoil your dinner.
No spoil dinner. Get dinner.
I can see that you got it. Did you get it from someone's house, or was it a stray? Just forget it.
Bigger mice.
Yeah, bigger. It's, we call them cats.
Cats.
Yeah. How did, you opened the door. How did you do that? With your claws? The crocodile thing swam around next to me and pulled itself up onto the stair, then tapped one clawed foot on the wood. Now that I saw them up close, foot wasn't exactly the right word. They were hands, as much as I could figure, with one curved digit extending out away from the others. You grew thumbs?
More cats.
It's not that easy. Cats are people's pets. We don't eat cats.
Need eat.
The creature leaned its head forward and nudged my shoulder with its scaly muzzle, then opened its mouth slightly so I could see its teeth. There was a strange sort of gleam in its eyes. What do you mean? You want to eat me?
Need eat.
I can get you more cats. The black crocodile slid back under the surface and disappeared into the murky depths of the basement. I pulled myself up and out of the water and slowly walked up the stairs as I tried to keep from panicking. Where the hell was animal control? What if they never called back? If nothing else, I could put a padlock on the basement door, or better yet, put up a wall and seal it off. But the water would just keep rising, and the pressure would force the door open eventually. Where the hell was it coming from?
Mr. Clark, I brought a new filter for the pump.
The plumber. Oh, God, not now. If I didn't answer the door, if I just waited long enough. I turned to look at the bottom of the staircase, where the crocodile was staring up at me again, half submerged. I knew what it wanted me to do.
Are you there? Mr. Clark?
Yes, I'm here. Just a minute. Hi, sorry about that.
Oh, you're all wet.
Yeah, I fell.
Oh, well, I didn't know if you heard me before, but I brought a new filter for the pump. I had an idea, too. I really think if... Wow. That water's pretty high now, huh? Mind if I go down and pull up the hose for the pump?
Yeah. Go ahead. Jesus Christ! I stepped into the doorway and looked down the stairs. The water at the bottom was stained red, rippling out from where the crocodile was swallowing the mangled plumber whole. Its mouth was open wider than I thought was possible, with rows of jagged teeth embedded into the lumpy flesh like steak knives. I could hear it gurgling as it pulled him deeper into its throat, almost purring with sick contentment at the meal I had just given it. How was that? A big enough cat for you? That's the last one. I sat through the rest of my day in traumatized silence. Beer helped. I drank myself into a fear-stricken stupor and turned the TV all the way up to drown out the sounds of tearing flesh and gnashing teeth from downstairs. What was the next step? Calling the police? What would I tell them? That some fucking thing from some fucking where ate my plumber? I'd be committed, or worse, charged with murder. But even if they locked me up, the water would just keep rising, and the thing would just keep eating. I couldn't hide it forever, could I? I waited for 2 days as the water rose. It was almost to the top of the stairs now, And although the black crocodile didn't surface, I knew it would soon. I avoided the news channels, afraid I'd see a picture of the man I had watched die and heard get messily chewed up and swallowed. I didn't want to know if anyone was looking for him, and I couldn't bear to find out if he had been a family man or a bachelor. Which would have been worse. On the second night, a knock on my front door jarred me out of my drunken mire of fear and regret. I walked slowly to the door, glancing out the window to check for red and blue lights, and stopped in front of it and waited, wondering with quiet dread who it was on the other side.
Dad?
Go home, honey.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Are you drunk?
Yeah.
Can I come in? It's important. We need to talk. I'll stand out here all night if I have to.
I turned to look at the shiny new padlock hanging on the outside of the basement door and tried to get some courage up. I couldn't manage it. Okay, we can talk outside.
Dad,
It's not safe in here, the flooding.
I don't care about the... I'm using my key.
You can't stay long.
Dad, I started going to AA.
What? Why?
Because I'm an alcoholic.
No, you're not.
I am, Dad. And I just wanted to let you know that I can't come over here anymore. There's always beer here and liquor, and I just can't. It's dangerous for me to be around it.
What, are you serious? I'm your father and you're not going to see me because I drink?
No, I'm not going to see you because you're drunk all the time.
I like to drink. Just because you have a problem doesn't mean I do.
I didn't say you had a problem.
You didn't have to.
I didn't come here to accuse you of anything, Dad. I'm just here to explain why I can't be around it.
Fine. Do your laundry somewhere else.
Dad.
What, I'm supposed to quit drinking now too? Just like that, just out of the blue because you can't hold your goddamn liquor? I don't need an ultimatum. I got enough of those from your mother. You probably don't even have a fucking problem. They just want you to buy a membership or something.
Dad.
Don't dad me. I'm not the one with the problem. I could quit if I wanted to.
Then why don't you?
This is not about me.
You know, I didn't think it was, but maybe I was wrong. I want to have a relationship with you, but I have to take care of myself, and I have to be honest with myself. You need to be honest, too.
The basement door splintered open behind me, and I froze. I closed my eyes and held them tight as I heard the heavy slaps of scaly feet charging down the hall. Then, Jess screamed. There was a loud thump, a fleshy rip, the snap of a neck. Then a slow, sickening, dragging sound that moved back past me and down the hall. I heard it drag her down the stairs one by one, thump, 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 then slip into the water with a quiet splash. Finally, I heard tearing, chewing, swallowing. I heard bones crack under the strength of its jaws. Half-pulped brain matter slurped out of her skull and down its throat, and the satisfied thrumming of a full stomach. After I could move again, I opened my eyes and slowly walked to the open doorway at the top of the basement stairs. The black water was so close to the top now. Soon it would spill over into the hall, then the kitchen. I stared down into the murky pool, looking for any signs of life from below. Purple lily pads floated peacefully on the water's surface, bobbing in the soft ripples. Finally, a vibrant, pulsing glow shined up from the bottom and moved from one side of the room to the other, traveling from the elongated snout of the now terrifyingly large creature to its thick, spike-covered tail. I could only make out its silhouette, resting on the basement floor, curled up like a self-satisfied cat that just caught a mouse. What are you?
Hungry.
Where did you come from?
Your world sprung a leak.
Mine is pouring in.
You killed my daughter.
She wanted to change you, to keep you from what you need. I have no such desire. If you feed me, I'll never ask you to stop. How much can you drink?
If I take it slow enough, if nobody stops me, I could keep drinking forever.
And I could eat forever. I'll grow, and the water will just keep rising. It will drown your house, your country, your world. And when it spills out over the edges of the clouds, it will drown your solar system. The water only gets deeper, little ape, and I only grow bigger. But I'm not greedy. I don't eat all that much. Just a little food every day. But maybe a little more food tomorrow.
Are you still hungry?
Are you still thirsty?
A Leak in the Basement was written and directed by Jonathan Inbody and adapted from his short story of the same name. It was edited by Jeffrey Lavin, with music composed and performed by Samantha Hunt. Clark, the narrator, was played by Jonathan Inbody, and Jess was played by Samantha Hunt. The plumber was played by Sean C. Sanders, and the cashier was played by Andrea Inbody. Gray Matter is a Word Search Media production. Any similarities to real people, places, or things is purely coincidental. Be kind. Rewind.